Welcome to this week's Weekly Lift with me, your host, Latoya Logan. I am excited to continue our conversation around trauma. So we began the trauma series at the beginning of May, and we've already covered topics related to what is trauma bounding, how we can disown trauma and the impact on our identity, and how we even choose to take risk in our life. So today we're going to close this topic up with how do we truly recover from trauma? So what are the stages of truly engaging in a healing practice? I have to start by saying there is no such thing as being healed from anything, and certainly not trauma. But the goal is that you will develop the skill set that as you continue your life and you have new experiences, that you can meet a new trigger, and know exactly what to do to calm, to de-escalate, and to recover without crisis. So to jump right in, how do you heal from trauma? Well, the first thing is that you have to let go of the idea that you can return to normal or turn to whatever was your pre-trauma functioning. As we've covered in the previous videos, trauma changes how we think, and trauma first and foremost can create cognitive biases in how we see the world, ourselves, and truly what we believe is possible for our lives. A cognitive bias is basically a change in the way that we think, where we now are seeing the world through a filtered lens per se. So instead of seeing things as they are, we begin to see things as our trauma sees them. So whether or not you trust a person is directly related to whether or not your trauma created a lack of trust. So let's start there. Cognitive biases can create three worldviews. One, it can create a feeling of unsafe, that the world itself is unsafe, that no matter what you do, you are unable to protect yourselves from potential threats or from potential abuses. And that's really, I think, why people struggle so much with the recovery piece, is because we get lost in this feeling that everywhere else out there is unsafe. And so we really become committed to creating what we believe is a sense of safety that really is just simply a trauma response. Ways that we create a sense of safety is isolation, choosing not to engage in relationships or new relationships, self-sabotage, and automatically seeing that there's going to be a problem, or believing that there's going to be a problem, and then completely distancing yourself from that. One of the things I talk to my clients often about is this idea of self-rejection. So before I even begin to pursue something, to try to do something, I convince myself that it isn't going to work out. It's going to fall apart. It's going to be like everything else. And so it gives me justification to not pursue anything, to not really set a goal, or to have a thought about what could be different in my future. So the cognitive biases that we're dealing with is, one, the world is unsafe. Two, people are untrustworthy or they might use you. And three, I am broken. I am so broken, and this is permanent, that nothing good will come in the world, because all people are going to see is this brokenness. And if I am broken, then everything I touch and everything I engage with will then undoubtedly become broken as well. So this is a serious cognitive distortion that impacts our relationships. It impacts how we care for ourselves, and it certainly impacts whether or not we believe we can recover. So recovering from trauma is really about deciding. It is about just choosing to heal, choosing to sit in the discomfort of the fear of what might happen on the other side of this new way of living that isn't about your trauma, but is about your recovery. So Judith Herman, who wrote an amazing book, Trauma and Recovery, I think like in 1992 was the first edition, and she really helped to set a standard approach for how we can support our clients and how we can choose to begin to take steps towards our own recovery practice. Her triphasic model, which is not important for you to know that phrasing, but her triphasic model includes 3 key components. The first, she says, you have to create safety and stabilization. The second thing you have to do is to be able to self-soothe and regulate uncomfortable, distressing, or negative emotions. And finally, you have to find a way to reconnect with other people, with being able to reconnect with yourself so that you can trust healthy reconnections with others. So how do you start any of that? So we go to the first step, safety and stabilization. Safety isn't about what is actually happening in reality. It's more about the cognitive bias that we have about what's happening in reality. Whether or not we are safe is completely irrelevant. Right now, where you are, you may be in your home, you may be in your vehicle, you may be at work, and you could be in a relatively safe space. There's a lock on the door, maybe you feel comfortable with everyone who is there, but you may still feel unsafe. You may still feel that at any moment something could happen to you. So what she says is we have to help people understand the difference between am safe, a state of reality that you're in a safe environment, versus feel safe, a state of emotions where you believe you are not safe, that this internal system within is telling us that a threat is imminent. How we do that is really about teaching grounding skills, helping to engage in reassuring techniques and behaviors, such as, really thinking about, okay, where am I? And all the terrible things that could be going through my head, what are the possibilities that those things will actually happen? And the more you begin to talk to yourself that way, the more you develop life's evidence to suggest that you probably are safe and you are probably responsible for that safety. Now, it's safety and stabilization, because we might feel safe in an environment, but maybe our environment is not stable. So we could be living with someone where we know this can't really be long term, or we might be in a situation where we don't feel that we have license to truly make decisions or influence what's happening. And so stabilization isn't just about I am somewhere. Stabilization is about this place has consistency, this place has predictability, my boundaries are being respected in the space that I am in, and I am free to speak up and voice my opinion if I don't like what is happening. And so safety is about melding the reality of being safe with the thought process or the cognition that we aren't safe. And then stabilization is about whether or not we believe our environment provides safety and that it is consistent, it is predictable, there are boundaries that are respected, and that you have the capacity to speak up and speak out when necessary. The second phase in this triphasic model is self-soothing techniques. We have to be able to reduce the feeling of overwhelm when we are triggered. And triggers are something that we often can't predict. And this is why no one else is responsible for our triggers. I hear a lot, you're triggering me. This is triggering to me. And I get it. Yes, you are having that very valid experience. But it doesn't mean that other people are responsible for your triggers. In fact, you are responsible for seeing your triggers and then being able to manage them, reduce the severity of the impact on your emotions, and hopefully be able to return to a feeling of safety so that you are grounded. Triggers are going to continue to happen throughout your life. And this is why we say healing isn't one and done. Yes, we can get to a place today where the triggers we've identified, we know how to manage them. But as you continue to live, you will have new experiences that we cannot predict and we cannot plan for. And this is why it's so important to develop emotional regulation skills, so that as you continue on your journey, your life, that when you are met with a new trigger, you know exactly what to do to de-escalate, to create grounding in yourself so that you return to safety. And then, of course, so that you can engage in some coping skills where you're able to recover without crisis. Finally, what we have to do is engage in reconnection. And this is about really first connecting to ourselves. And the way that we do that is by helping to tell ourselves a new story about our trauma. So in the video Disowning Trauma, we talked about how people like to make meaning of trauma, which means we then own trauma, which means then that trauma is responsible for our successes. Trauma becomes responsible for our resiliency. Trauma becomes responsible for any progress that we make. And that is the worst thing you can do if you're truly trying to heal. If you want to heal and recover from trauma, then you have to release trauma, which means you have to make sure that you're not giving the traumatic experience credit for all of the good work that you are doing. And this is where we engage in narrative therapy, which is basically helping you to tell your story without being emotionally triggered by the story, by not returning to the emotional severity of where you were when you experienced the trauma. But most importantly, that you are telling yourself a story that is rooted in your internal resiliency, your capacity to have dealt with this huge change and to navigate what comes to you moving forward. So the first thing is you reconnect with yourself by telling yourself the true story of your resiliency and releasing the trauma. The second thing is that you're then able to reconnect with other people because you no longer will engage in trauma bonding. You're looking for healthy connections. You're looking for people who reaffirms your resiliency, reaffirms your self-worth, but more than that, are ready to go with you on this next journey of your life that is beyond the traumatic experience. So how we begin to reconnect with people is first self-trust. One of my favorite books, and I literally buy this book for most people that I love, is The 4 Agreements. And Don Miguel Ruiz says in the book that if you have trouble trusting other people, it's because you lack confidence in yourself. And I thought, wow, that really is powerful, because trust is about you believing in your ability to discern danger, to make a healthy decision. It's your ability to trust that you will be okay regardless of what anyone else does. So if you're making decisions on relationships or goals that is rooted in your fear that, oh, this person might hurt me or that might fall apart, that really is about you not trusting you, not trusting that you can make a good decision, not trusting that you can withstand a disappointment or a setback, and most importantly, not trusting that you can recover from another seemingly negative experience. So reconnection isn't about other people. It's always about you. First and foremost, telling yourself the true story of your worth. Secondly, learning how to trust you again, trusting your ability to make a good decision. And then finally, trusting you that you can set boundaries should you decide that the relationship or the goals that you're following or the workspace that you've chosen to go into is no longer serving you. I tell my clients this all the time. We never have to make all the right decisions. But the fact of the matter is, as Stacey Abrams said, you can do everything right and still make a mistake. It's okay. It isn't that you make a mistake. It's that you are able to recover from that mistake without believing that this happened because I am broken. This happened because everything I do falls apart. This happens because no one loves me. This happened because I'm just no good. Reconnection is about truly understanding that you can do everything in your power that would be the right steps, that nothing else could have been done, and you still might not get where you want to go. So we're going to pick back up next week on actual things you can do to create a feeling of safety so that you can learn how to emotionally regulate. And then finally, some ways to vet decision making so that you can begin to trust yourself more and develop that self-confidence to be able to reconnect in a healthy manner. Hopefully this has been beneficial to you. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment. I would love to answer any questions, share, and subscribe. And of course, I will see you next Monday.